Jason Sevy, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Thank you for coming all the way out here. You are the school board chair for the Marsing School District, and you're also the president-elect of the Idaho School Boards Association. Is that correct?
That is correct.
There we go, man. You and I actually connected a while back before this conversation even started, because I did a presentation for Marsing about tech safety, because there's a hole in tech safety in the state of Idaho. And effectively, we are handing out technology to young people that's very secure, but it's not perfectly secure. And when I realized, like, oh, there are these problems, and especially at scale. Like if you give out 20 Chromebooks from, a school district, you're probably not going to have any problems. But at scale, when you're talking about 10,000, 20,000, 40,000, you'll have problems pop up. And understanding that, I worked really hard with SRO and a bunch of law enforcement agencies to figure out, okay, is there something we could do to educate parents to help them understand the risk, mitigate the risk? I brought it to the State Department of Education. Superintendent Critchfield is super on board. And then me and my partner, SRO Gomez, just gave it to the state of Idaho. And I presented it to you guys saying like, hey, this is the program that we have, and we're offering it to you for free. It's something that will help parents understand the risks associated with technology and, help them understand what they can do when the technology comes home and how they can protect their kids from tech. And it also applies to just personal consumer technology as well. And the Marsing was like, yeah, this is great. And it got me thinking a lot, especially in recent times, the requirements that public school districts have. Quinn Perry from ISBA also said something the other day. It was like the majority of the requirements that school districts have are to keep kids safe, like fingerprints or like tech safety equipment or whatever it might be. And that's a guarantee that we experience. I'm a public school dad. And some of my kids go to public school, and then some go to a charter school, both public schools, obviously, but neighborhood versus charter. And there are a lot of aspects of school safety, especially, having armed guards or SROs that are armed in schools. All of this stuff is coming as either requirements or things that the schools and communities are rallying together to provide for their families. So I wanted to talk to you today, at least in part, about what school safety mechanisms are getting put in place that are either required or elective for the District of Marsing.
So we have several things in Marsing that we have implemented over the last 5 to 6 years. Before then, there was no money, and we was able to pass a bond to build a new gymnasium and a new middle school with 72% approval rating, which is amazing in this time. So part of that bond was putting safety vestibules in all of our front offices. And so then we have a place where it's a stop where parents can check in. We could keep them in at least a more secure area instead of every door wide open. And so that's the way it used to be. When I was a kid, there was no locked doors at school. You just came and go. And so now, like, as part of the school board, one of our number one priorities is having safety of our children. And we take it very, very seriously.
And you're talking like there's safety could be a lot of things, but you're talking like literally hardscape safety, right? Like you have the castle kind of metaphor, which is like keep people out, have neutral areas or spaces. Barrier. Yeah, exactly.
And so that's a capital side. And so we was able to raise capital to build that in our school. And so that is going to be there for as long as the school is there. But then we also, every person that volunteers for a school district or every person that is coaching, even in any kind of mechanism, is fingerprinted and ran through the database, and it costs $45. And so this happens from bus drivers all the way up to the superintendent. They have to be checked. And so when we're building a school, also part of the contract on the school is everybody that comes on those grounds have to be background checked. And that's every contractor. So now we've got a huge amount of safety that we go into, because when you have a group of companies that's coming onto an active school, you have to make sure that everybody's safe. And we take it very seriously as school board members and the ISBA for sure.
So bottom line is not just hard capital improvements, but also the personnel coming in. You have security measures to make sure that they're not sketchy or weird.
Yeah. Even when they don't work for us, even if they're just a subcontractor of the main contractor.
Just dropping something off.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It is in the contract that you sign as when you start doing work for a school. This is part of your job to cover that.
Gotcha. And do you have you guys have an SRO now, right? Or at least one for the next couple of years?
Yeah. So we, let's go back a couple years. We didn't have any money for an SRO. So we started looking into what can we do? We talked about what if we armed teachers? Because we're out in Hawaii County. We're 30 minutes from the Murphy, which is where the sheriff's office is. We're a long ways from pretty much anything. So we sent out surveys. We got information back. And while we were doing that, we were also grant funding and looking for money to solve our issue. Well, the State Department of Ed had $150,000 that we was awarded in Marsing that covered an SRO for 2 years. So that's a big deal for us. I mean, that's huge. Now, for last year and this year, we have a full SRO on staff all the time that we partnered with the sheriff's office in Hawaii County. Plus, we had some extra money with that grant. We put in speed bumps because that's another safety thing. We had too much pavement and not enough slowing down. So there's little things that every school will do differently. And that's part of it. It's like you just don't know where you're going to end up.
Gotcha. But bottom line is you have a real structural security kind of plan put in place, as well as personnel safety plan put in place, as well as security guard plan put in place. So you're kind of checking all of those individual boxes.
Yeah. And then once a year, the school board sits down with the EMS, the fire department, which is a volunteer EMS and volunteer fire department, and our sheriff's office, and we go in an executive session. So we close all the doors, and it's just the school board, the superintendent, and principals, and these first responders.
Gotcha.
And we go through their safety plan. Like, this is our flip chart. If there's an earthquake, this is where the kids are going to be. This is where we're going to land the helicopter. This is what we're going to do. Every school does this, and they do it every single year because that it matters. Everybody, because you don't know if the fire department people are rotating through. So you just have to make sure that every year, we usually do it in August. That's when we have it on our calendar, that we have everybody come in, shut it down, and then we go through every step of the safety process.
Yeah, these are the types of things, even when you're talking about all these, it's like, wow, there's a lot that goes into, I think everybody assumes that there's a certain level of safety when you're dealing with kids. That's fine. But the level of administrative foresight and just getting through all of these different things where it's like, okay, now we got to find somebody who writes grants, and like, we got to do this and we got to do that. That leads to, I was talking to somebody the other day. It was either Dr. Derek Bubb from West Ada or Stony Winston from Fruitland, but we were talking about the administrative bloat, and people are really critical of public schools, especially larger districts, having this big administrative kind of body of personnel. And the flip side of that is, yeah, but like, we're required to do all these things for each of our individual school sites. Like, that takes full-time people all the time, 365, doing these things every single week to report back to these requiring agencies that they are in fact fulfilling their obligations.
That's 100%. And that's not counting like federal programming and Title IX and all these things that you have to, special ed, all the reporting that's involved with special ed. There's full-time people that, even for us, where we are, 87% of our budget for the year is salaries and benefits. And so we are dealing with a slim margin of everything else, trying to make it stretch for all the other essentials that we take care of in school.
Did you say 87% of your entire budget salary and benefits?
Yep. That's exactly right.
Wait, so you have to do everything with 13%. You guys have a dirt track, right?
We do.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's what we're grant funding for dirt to get a track. And we're working on that. And we've had, but
you have successful runners too. Like, I can't remember who it was, but didn't somebody go on to do like D1 track and field recently?
Yep.
So it's like, he's running on a dirt track. He's like, I got this. Don't worry.
Yeah. He actually transferred his senior year to go to West Ada. I think it was Rocky Mountain, and ran for them on the 5A level or the 6A, whatever it is. But yeah, that's the kind of thing, like, that's school choice. Like, that is true. He found like, okay, my needs aren't getting served over here, but I really like it here. But I'm going to go to a bigger school to where I can excel and get in front of more people. I think that's what we do.
Yeah, the ability to transfer to a different school as long as they have openings, it doesn't matter what district you're in, you can just go there. I found that out recently. I'm like, that's wild that you can just, I mean, it used to be this thing when I was in high school. I was going to this really crappy high school, and there was this really good high school just 3 miles up the block, Northgate, up the street. And I was like, oh man, if only. It's like, yeah, but you got to do like an inter-district transfer, and you always get denied, because they wanted to keep, essentially kids at the schools they were zoned for, and I was not zoned for a good school, and that was this huge headache. But I have a friend who is at Eagle Middle, or was at Eagle Middle, and then just like, I really want my daughter to go to somewhere else, right? To perhaps go to somewhere in Middleton or whatever, and she's gonna be able to do that. Like, it's no problem. It's not even a question. She's able to transfer it out.
Well, and we've seen that a lot during COVID too, where Marsing, we didn't have mask mandates. We was person to person. We had a lot of kids transfer in because they didn't want to wear masks in schools, and we had parents driving from Meridian to come to Marsing because they felt like they were disfranchised there. So
wait, how'd you pull off no mask mandate or anything like that? You're just like, I'm not about that life.
It's a local control community, and so when we looked at what we were doing is in Marsing, our community didn't want it. Or like, we are not going to have mask mandates. If you want to wear a mask, more power to you, but we're not going to require it for any of our kids. And we probably had 98% of the kids not wear masks. And there was times where we had an outburst, and then we'd shut a school down, and we'd quarantine a school, or we did just like everybody else that was wearing masks and was doing all these things. We just kept on living, and that's Marsing. I mean, we're in the country, and we want to stay there, and we like being that part of, just doing what we want to do, keep our heads down and go to work.
Yeah. Marsing seems different. Like, I went out there to meet with your superintendent one day, Norm Stewart, and just driving out there, I'm like, this is different. Like, what's happening? Then I get to Norm, and I actually drive home, tell me, I'm like, man, we got to move to Marsing. And then I instantaneously felt bad. I'm like, oh, I'm going to be like that guy from like, the Eagle area, moving to Marsing, trying to get out to the country. It was like, they'd hate us. I can't do this. But it's a great community. And what's interesting too, I actually interviewed Norm because your capacity in a small town without like tons and tons and tons of financial backing, right? You're predominantly an ag-based community, was able to pass this bond at, again, north of 70% approval rating to support your school. Mm-hmm. And I needed to understand that. It's like, wait a minute, the sentiment has always been that it's, these rural places don't care about education, right? It's like, oh, we're so great because we're in, whatever the concentrated, urban environment you're in. I don't know, whatever. Yeah. And there's always, I'll take West Ada. There's always, every time something comes around to like fund West Ada, the haters on next door fire up, and they're just like, rah! One, my favorite one is? This guy in the West Ada area that last time they were trying to run a 2-year levy, whatever it was. He was like, West Ada has $150 million in their savings account, and they're asking you for like X chunk of money. And so I get a hold of, I think it was like my school board or somebody. I'm like, hey, what's the deal with this? They're like, we don't have 150. I was like, well, this guy's saying you do. Like, what do you think? He's like, this is what happens. We get $150 million from the state twice a year. Okay. And that money, if we get it on January 1st, we don't get another penny until July 1st. So on January 1st, whatever the dates are, he's like, on January 1st, we have $150 million sitting in a bank account, and that has to help us survive all the way until like June 25th, when they're like, we got $10,000 in the bank. And then, on July 1st, you get this infusion. And I was like, that's ridiculous that this is what he's like. I know, we tell him all the time. And like every single time he fires up that we have all this money and this is what he's talking about. And I was like, gosh, that's so annoying. Then to hear you guys just sail through north of 70%, I'm like, yeah, we'll get behind the school.
Well, community is a little different. And like, I love public schools, and I graduated from Marsing. I have always lived in Marsing, so I'm very passionate about that town. And we have people that just work hard and always are volunteering, and that's part of what we do. So we have always had a bus driver shortage, and I've been on the board. This will be my 9th year in June. And so my wife, she decided, okay, I'm going to go start driving bus, because my youngest daughter, who's 5, Miss Scarlett, she's going to go into kindergarten. So I could go take her to school,
Sure.
pick her up. Perfect. So I remember walking into school to take my 5-year-old, and I have a senior and a sophomore at this time, but I've got a kindergarten. This is where we're at, right? So I walk into the class. I walk in and we're dropping them off, and we're walking out, and all these parents are crying, and my wife and I give each other a high five because we're like, yeah, we got our kid in school. I mean, this is what we want. So we dropped our daughter off, and then 15 days later, my wife passed away from a heart arrhythmia. And so my whole world changed like overnight. And now I have 3 kids in school and I'm a single dad. And so I talked to the school opens up the cafeteria for us to do a funeral dinner. I mean, this is part of the community that we live in. As we have built all these grants over the years, we have an after school program. And so our after school program was able to watch Miss Scarlett in the evenings. So I would get off work, I'd be able to go pick her up from school because they would keep her till 5:30. And it's a safe place. And it's the same teachers that's with her. And so we have been able to raise enough money in Marsing to pay those teachers to stay a couple extra hours. Well, I always had a wife at home. We was a traditional family. But now I'm not. Now my kids are at risk. And so I'm the chairman of the school board, but everything's different. So we start going, and that having that little structure made it better. And I could talk to her teachers, I could make sure that Scarlett's doing good. The older kids are older. They're teenagers. They're moving on their own. They've got sports, they've got all this stuff. But my 5-year-old is the one I got to make sure that's going to be okay, right? So I go and we start building together. And so then the next year, we still go through that school program. I'm working with Ken Price, who's the director of it. He's fantastic. Everything the school made my life better every step of the way. 3 years down the road, I find the second love of my life. And in 10 days, we get married. But I call Miss Scarlett's teacher, which was a fantastic teacher, and I call her up and I'm like, Wendy, this is a big change in Scarlett's life. I need you to watch her and let me know, like, what do I need to do? What are you hearing? Because you're going to hear from her because she trusts you. And you were her only female that was watching over her for the last 6 months. And so here she's sending me emails like, oh, the whole class today got together, and because Scarlett didn't know what she was going to call her new mom. So they got together and they decided that Mama A was going to be what they were going to call. And so this is like the bond of what a small community school is like. And so when people say that they think public schools are failing, it's offensive to me because it's not only that I'm a product of public schools, but they matter. And if you don't think they matter, then you do not have a clue what's going on in this world.
Jason, I'm so sorry. Like, you just took me from like this thing that I thought was really funny to the saddest thing I could have imagined back to something beautiful. I honestly don't even like, I'm so sorry you went through that, but I'm so happy that that's the way this story ends, or where you are now. Like,
yeah. And my new wife, she's already adopted Scarlett. So she's her legal guardian. And we've been together for 2 years, super happy. I mean, getting remarried in your 40s is awesome because you're not a kid anymore. You don't fight like you did when you was a kid. It's great. It's the greatest thing ever. I wouldn't recommend the first part, but the second part's really cool. But it's fantastic. And I have a 10-year-old and she loves, my wife, April, and it's been the greatest thing ever. And we've been able to grow, but the main thing that kept us all square was our school.
Did you get married young?
I did. Yeah, we were 21 and 19. Wow. And so we were married for 18 years.
So you guys went through like all your. I was thinking about these fights I had with my wife because we got together when I was like 22, she was 21, or I was 23 and she was 22, and then we were together, and then we ended up getting married a couple years later. but like the arguments about where like the most asinine, like it's impossible for you even to have an answer for this. Like I remember one time we were in the car, we were like 23 and we were arguing about what my employment would be when I was like 35.
Yeah.
It's like, I have no idea. And so when you talk about like just being an idiot, when you're just like, yeah, man, those arguments were the worst. Look, they're so needless and so useless. I mean, you're just kids.
And then when you're in your 40s, you understand, like you understand also losing somebody and being grateful to have somebody and all this stuff that comes along with that. And so you're like, okay, who cares if she didn't put the cap on the toothbrush? It's not going to change my life tomorrow. That's where you're at.
Yeah. You know, my parents got divorced when I was really young. They're both still alive, thank God. But I remember going to the counselor one day. I actually don't remember even going. I remember being at school. It was like they were fighting before school or something. And I remember going to turn something in. And then the next thing I remember is like, I'm crying at my teacher's desk and she's crying looking at me. And I like look over my left shoulder and there are all the kids in the class like that. They were like just all the whole place was frozen. And you know, I went to the counselor's office. I ended up drawing a dumb horse. I was a horrible artist, but I fancied myself a reasonable artist. And, you know, my family really struggled. And I had a couple key teachers. And for me, it was really athletics in the public school. I had, you know, two coaches in particular. One was this wrestling coach I had when I was 14. And he was wild, Paul Brown. It was like, man, he was a different kind of guy. He made me view myself differently. And then one was a swim coach when I was a senior in high school. And the swim coach, you know, to the level of I was applying to colleges and I was paying for the college apps with my paper route money, I remember. And I didn't have parents or, you know, adults really looking over my shoulder to help me iron out dates and times and everything. I remember seeing him. He was a teacher on campus. And I remember seeing him one day. I was like, oh no, like there's this whole big train wreck with like this application at like this school or this school. And he handed me his cell phone. This is back when like cell phones were a thing to have. And he was like, call him right now. I'm like, well, I don't have the number. He's like, find the number and call the Department of Admissions. And I was like, oh, okay. Took it. And I remember I was standing in the hallway, like calling UC whatever about the admissions. But those are the reasons I made it to college, right? Like, and those are the reasons I kind of made it through my childhood, having those connections at the public school. So, you know,
I think that's everybody in that building and in Marsing or all these places. They don't go to public school to get rich. They like kids. They want to take care of kids. And they're making a living however they're going to make a living. But the people that are there, they love children. And you could see it. And you walk through an elementary and you see you get hugs from kids because I'm around some. So kids will come up and give me hugs like, oh, you're Scarlett's dad. That's the greatest thing ever.
That's the greatest thing ever.
Yeah. And it's like, all these teachers, they don't ever do it to get rich. They're there because they love kids, and even the junior high or the janitors and all the people that are trying to keep everything in order. They don't hardly get paid anything, but they're there all the time. And sometimes it's because the schedule lines up with their kids, and they can work while their kids in school, and then that helps also their family, because then they can go home with their kids after school. So. Yeah. You have a hard time arguing with me that it's not working because I see it firsthand all the time.
You know what I've been trying to flush out? I was like, why? I was talking to somebody earlier today. Why is it that when people are polled in general, they say they like their school, but they think all the other schools are the problem? And I've been trying to tease this out because I have done, and again, my position on education is like, I'm for it. I'm for all of it, baby. Yeah. I want the best education for Idaho kids, be it public, private, you know, make them education contractors. I don't care. Like, just let's get the best education, however we need to skin this cat. Okay. Let's first establish what education is. And then like, then let's just say, okay, whoever wants this money to accomplish this goal following these requirements, you can have this money. I'm all in. The Representative Mathias went to a voucher, had a voucher program. We went to a private school when he was in high school, like in Massachusetts or something. So and that really opened my eyes because like he's a really bright guy. Obviously that worked out successfully for him. I don't know the details of the program, but it was like one of the oldest voucher programs in the country. It was like, wow. So, okay, if I'm really for education, like I should really look at all of these avenues and then we just figure out the best system for it. But the thing I've been trying to flush out in all of these conversations is you have a lot of people like me who move here that predominantly had bad experiences with education in California. Now, I can tell you I didn't go to a great public school system and like, fine, I made it through, no problem. But that doesn't bother me. What bothers me is what my kids went through. And I had yanked my kids. By the time I moved here, I had pulled my kids out of the public education system in California. And I could tell you things about that education system that are not good. And just from a policy standpoint, it's wild times. And I still have friends on the school board, everything. And they're, it's like fighting the tide. They're like, you co-parent with the state. Like the state has an active role in saying that they need to protect your kids from you. Like they interject themselves. Darkness, right? So you have people like me that move here and we've never had the experience that you're talking about, right? And we see public education as a problem. And we're not like, I'm not wrong, by the way. The things that I saw in California, I'm not wrong. And I will, on God, man, where's the Bible? I'll put my hand on it. Like these are things that happen. So I'm not wrong, but I'm also wrong to say that that's what's happening here everywhere. And like, that's what, like, I see the comments on like public school is just indoctrination. It's like, really, is it? Like, you don't seem like you're interested in indoctrination, Jason. Like there's this problem and this disconnect with failure to actually communicate and experience Idaho for what Idaho is. And I see more people like me that have moved here from California that bring along their baggage. And I am not putting those people down. I am one of them. I've gone through a lot of, I spend all day talking to Idahoans and Idaho leaders and trying to understand what Idaho is. Like, I do not expect everybody else to be able to do that, but there is this genuine disconnect between like what Idaho is and what, for instance, public schools are here versus what we see on our cell phones or what we've experienced in past times. And I just don't. And again, I don't know the answer to this problem. And I certainly don't know the answer to like the school choice problem. It's like, can we just make it so everybody has an even playing field? Like take all the requirements that you have to abide by in Marsing and require that of the private schools. I'd be 100% on board for all school choice. Unleash it. You just have the exact same rules. Like that's any contractor in the entire world does that. It's like, if you're going to contract and remove some job from the public sector, then you're going to contract in the private sector. You got to do the same thing. Like you're talking about jails. Yeah. Keep people in jails, keep them alive. You got to keep them fed, take them medical, right? Like whatever it is. Doesn't matter to me, but like, how do we, and again, I'm not saying that if everybody understood your story, then everybody would agree. There's plenty of room for discussion, but like, how do we express more that like, look, what's happening in Idaho is not what happened in other states. And it's not what you're seeing on your phone, right? How do we talk to people about that?
That's a great question. And that's why I'm here is we have to tell our story. And as school officials and trustees of the state, where we see all these great things that are happening in our small towns, with what 80% rural schools in Idaho, isn't that the number?
Yeah.
So it's happening all over, and we have to become and tell our story and explain why we're doing this volunteer work for no money, and that's taking hours out of our month to take care of this. And also, it's a tough job, but we do it because we love our communities and we want to make our community stronger. And educating our students and our children in our community makes our community better.
It does, man. That's the only path forward.
It's kids. I'll tell you another quick story.
Please. Hang on. I got to prepare myself. This has been a long day. I was not emotionally prepared for you today.
So, when I first got on the board, I went to the 3rd of July celebration at Marsing. So we we do it on the 3rd. It's our deal. But there was a board member who I went to school with his kids, and he was there for 20 years. And he ran into me. He's like, Jason, I just saw in the newspaper that you got on the school board. And I was like, oh, he's like, well, thank you, because that's a tough job. And I said, oh, I'm going to give it my best shot. And he goes, no matter what you do, if you err on the side of children. And that's my philosophy. It's like, if I have to make a decision, whatever's best for the kids is where I want to live. Because if it's wrong, you're still doing what's best for the kids. And that's what basic of trying to make it work as a school board member.
Yeah. I mean, that really is it.
Yeah. It's all about the kids. Like, if you can grow your own community's children to be better citizens and better people, then you are winning in life.
Well, it was my path out.
Yeah.
You know, and again, I did not have, I had as good a shot as I needed, and I took it. And I'm very thankful for my education, because that's pretty much all I got. Whatever weird matters rattling around in between my ears is pretty much all I have every day to get through. Listen, man, I don't even want to ask you other questions. I appreciate your story.
Yeah.
Thank you for telling me the story of Marsing.
No, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
I think you're right. I think you're 100% right. I think we need to hear from Chalice. I think we need to hear from Salmon. I think we need to hear from like Blackfoot, and we need to hear. There's no way we're ever going to experience the rural schools of Idaho and experience what life is there unless we hear from them. We got to come together as a state and help each other understand each other.
Exactly.
I honestly, until this moment, I have never thought about that. You know, I spend a lot of time in my days kind of like talking like, oh, these are leaders, or, oh, this is this. And, you know, I am genuinely trying to understand Idaho, but man, I'm missing a giant swath of it. Thank you for coming in, sir. I appreciate you.
Yep. Thank you.